Hi, tonight we have a special guest on Meet the Author, Steve Reilly, who is the present Vice President of CAPA, Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, and he wrote the book, The Fat Lady Never Sings, which is about baseball. The Fat Lady Never Sings is a remarkable true story of the 1992 Derby Red Raiders as told by one of its assistant coaches, Steve Reilly, author. The smallest school in the league, Derby qualifies for the state baseball tournament and ultimately advances to the championship game. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, good evening, Chase. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. Let me read a little bit about you. Since 1976, Steve Reilly has coached baseball in Connecticut's lower Naugatuck Valley. He has coached Babe Ruth baseball, which is ages 13 to 15, senior Babe Ruth, ages 16 to 18, and American Legion baseball teams, and has been involved as an instructor for the Cal Ripken baseball program at the Derby Shelton Boys Club. Steve has spent the last 25 years assisting high school baseball coaches. He has assisted at Derby High School, Emmett O'Brien Regional Vocational School in Ansonia, and at Seymour High School, where he currently is an assistant. In the summer months, Mr. Reilly is also an assistant broadcaster of American Legion baseball games, that's ages 16 to 19, for SportingNewsCT.com. It's the website, and they have streaming events. In 2011, Mr. Reilly was the recipient of the Connecticut American Legion Baseball's Media Award and has assisted on broadcasts of high school and American Legion baseball games for CPTV and CTSN, Connecticut Public Television, and Connecticut Sports Network. Steve,
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about the book, The Fat Lady Never Sings.
Well, the book's about a story about a redemption for high school athletes. In the town of Derby in 1991, Derby had been very, very big into football. And they had a 28-year winning streak where no team had had a losing record. And in 1991, that streak was broken. And the kids on that same team went on to play baseball. And they made their way to a state championship and ultimately won it. So in the same high school year, they went from being losers forever to winners forever. So it's sort of like Hoosiers, if you want to make a basketball reference, only in this book, it goes into overtime, as the game ends up lasting, the state championship game, that is, ends up lasting 4 extra innings, with lead changes going back and forth, and ultimately the kids from Derby prevailing.
And that is a very exciting book. I read it and wrote even a review on Amazon.com. It was excellent. And we talked a little bit about why did you write the book and what it means to be a coach.
Well, I wrote the book because I really thought it was a story that should have been told. I had been an assistant on the team in that year in 1992, and it was coming up on the 15th year anniversary of the team's victory. So about the year 14, after the championship, I decided that since nobody else had written the story about this remarkable team, that I would do it. And that's the reason why I did it, is that it just seemed like somebody should tell the story about these remarkable young men who really showed the value of perseverance and winning.
And what is the coach's role in helping the team win? And how would you, and we talked a little bit also about the difference of coaching baseball, football, and other sports. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in baseball, I have a great respect for baseball players. And the reason for that is because anybody can tell you when somebody struck out. Anybody can tell you who blew the game, so to speak. So every time a player comes up to bat, his ego is on the line, especially at that young age. They have to learn how to deal with failure. As if they batted 300, they would probably end up in the Hall of Fame or get a college scholarship, which means that you have to fail 7 out of 10 times and still keep coming back.
So that's a lesson for life also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can anybody be a coach?
Well, I mean, the first thing you need is a love of kids. I think that's paramount. Secondly, you have to have the sport, whatever it is that you're thinking about getting involved in. You want to have a certain knowledge of that so you can teach the game itself to the young kids.
Is there a special training to be a coach if someone wanted to be a coach?
Well, in Connecticut, if you want to coach high school, you have to actually have a coach's license, which simply means that you have to take a coach's course, which is sponsored by the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Commission, or the CIAC as it's called. So you have to take that course. You also have to be trained in first aid and CPR. And if you successfully complete those 3 things, you can then have a license, which is 5 years, and it has to be renewed every 5 years, obviously. And you also have to take continuing education, where we constantly are learning more and more about how to be a coach and how to do it successfully.
Well, actually, I notice a lot of coaches write books eventually, and maybe in the future, you have to write a book to be a coach. So tell me again, what's the difference between coaching baseball, which you mentioned a little bit about, and coaching the other sports?
Well, I think in coaching baseball, you have to, kids have to be taught the fundamentals as they do in any sport, however. But in baseball, you have to try to instill in a young player that they have to be patient, because baseball is the kind of game that you have to have a lot of concentration to play, and the aggressiveness sometimes can work against you. So any aggression that you have in the game has to be channeled in the right manner, so to speak. In other words, if you're really tense, you're not going to end up being a very good hitter than you would, say, in the sport of football, where you sort of have to coach it in such a way that players don't get injured.
That brings up a good point. So the skill set in being a coach in one sport is not the same as the skill set in another sport, or they're interchangeable?
Well, I think there's a lot of it that's interchangeable. For example, there's a lot of coaches who have successfully, in Connecticut, coached different teams, coached football, for example, and coached baseball at the same time, or some coaches have coached basketball in baseball, or football, or vice versa. I think a lot of the skill set that you learn in coaching, or at least as you gain experience in coaching, transforms itself to almost any sport, other than the fundamentals that you have to teach, the lessons that you have to teach, the teamwork concepts that you have to instill. Those are all the same from sport to sport. So whether you coach football, you coach baseball, or basketball for that matter, which your first object is to know your players as best you can, to learn as much as you can about them, and that's where you're going to be able to motivate them.
And also in talking, we found out that there was a little connection to Wethersfield. So before we mention that connection, what exactly is scouting a team?
Scouting a team is what coaches do not only for football, but also for baseball at times. And it basically is looking at the other teams that you might face and trying to examine them to find out ways to beat them. I mean, that's basically it, or what you might have to do to be competitive against that particular team.
And you told me you scouted Wethersfield?
At one time, yeah, when I was coaching Seymour High School. We were a larger school a few years back, and I had the fortune to come up here to Wethersfield and take a look at some Wethersfield teams throughout the years. And they've got a great baseball program up here. They do very well. They have a lot of athletes, and it's always a pleasure to come up this way to take a look at them.
And let's have you read from your book. Again, an excellent book, very exciting.
Well, in Derby, as I said before, one of the things that is, we were a big football town, and so winning played a big part in it. So the passage I'm going to read here is just a general one about what winning and success means in a way. Is that, and I'm quoting, "People want to remember success and forget about failure. Even a child knows he does not want to be the one holding the wonder ball or the one without a chair when the music stops. Perhaps we feel that way as children because winners are admired and accepted. Perhaps it's because it makes them feel they've achieved a bit of immortality, to gain something that nobody else has. Or perhaps it's because winning makes the pain of life go away, even if only for a moment. When you're part of a team, if you put the team's goals ahead of your own, the reward can be everything that's good about life. Friendship, camaraderie, loyalty, a connection that lasts forever." And that was the quote about what it means to be a part of a team. And one of the things that we were very fortunate in Derby to be blessed with some great people who are some great coaches that made their way up through, that we were, as coaches today, are able to pattern ourselves after. And one of them was a man that coached at Derby for many years. He was well revered. His name was Louis DeFlippo. And Coach Lou, or Big Lou as he was called, was a personal friend of Vince Lombardi's. He had played at Fordham, and he was the center and captain of their team. He went on to play for the New York Giants, went on to play, I believe, he was assistant coach for the Baltimore Colts for a while until he was drafted into the service. But Big Lou, as they called him, was the mainstay of Derby High School for many years, and he was very well respected. And I'll read from a passage about what chapter that I have called Big Lou's Reign. If a male student got into trouble at the school, they didn't suspend him. They simply made him see coach. A visit to the coach was worse than a suspension. Lou's voice sounded like a drill sergeant's. As you stood in line for attendance on the wooden gym floor before jumping jacks commenced, he always barked, "If you quit at anything, you'll quit at everything. You'll quit on your team, your school, your friends. You'll someday quit on your wife and your family, and you'll quit on yourself. Nobody quits in Derby." So that was what Big Lou instilled in our young men who played for Derby High School, is that concept of never quitting, of never giving up, no matter what.
That's true, because there is a famous expression by Ford. There are two types of people, those that say I can and those that say I can't, and they're both right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Tell me, so you're a lawyer, but you had the story to tell, and the story was actually, you told it 14 years after it happened, okay? So you wanted to get the story out, and you were not really technically an author. So tell us a little bit about the process, maybe through CAPA, Connecticut Association of Authors and Publishers, and your role in CAPA, and how did you become an author, and what in the future you want to do as an author.
Okay, well, to start with the first one, when I wrote the book, it took me about 6 to 8 weeks to write the first draft. Then it took me a year and a half to edit it.
To edit it.
I had two separate professional editors look at the book and edit it, and I also had a proofread. So it went through a wide variety of things before it ever got to the publishing stage.
So I want to interrupt over here for one moment. Stephen says something very important about writing books that we know today. You can't just write the book and self-edit it. You have to have an editor. I don't know if you need 3 editors and proofreaders, but you have to have someone else edit your book. And many authors don't understand this and do not do this. And that is one of the things we do in an author association. We promote the idea of editing books.
Absolutely, Jason. In the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, we also have professional editors, which people and members can network with and talk to, and perhaps engage them if they so choose to help with their particular writing.
One of the things I discovered about editors is that there's more than one type of editor. There's content editors, there's editors that just correct the spelling and the grammar. There's different type of editors, and I didn't even know that.
Yeah, copy editors, things of that nature. And I in my practice, in my profession, I do a lot of writing, and I always thought that why would I need an editor? And when I wrote to my professional editor, and he said, let me write one of your chapters and rewrite it and show you. And that's the point when I learned the real value of editing, that he simply rewrote the thing and said back to me, this is what you can do to make it sound better. And so anybody who's writing a book would be well benefited by having an editor, if you can afford it. Or, you know.
So after you had the book edited, then what happened?
Well, after I had it edited, it was proofread. So I had to go back and make sure that there was no typos or spelling errors. And actually I found one right before it was produced, which dealt with the year, because I mixed up the year on Thanksgiving of 1991 versus Thanksgiving of 1992. So I had made those final corrections to the book, and then finally it came out. And it was well received in Derby, of course, because it was really a ready-made audience of people who were waiting to hear about that particular story. And after that, I started to look on the internet to try to have some camaraderie with people who were also authors and see where that would take me. So that's when I discovered the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, went to a few meetings, got to know some of the people there and how dedicated they are. And then I learned something very, very valuable. Whereas it's not always true in my profession that there's a cooperation, like we constantly are battling each other in a courtroom. Mm-hmm. That with authors, it's the opposite, that they are always willing to explain things, to tell people about things, and to offer advice, and to offer help.
So it's a good group to associate with?
Oh, absolutely. And I just don't say that just because I'm associated with it. Mm-hmm. I think it's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. And that's great. And what are different ways, so let's get now to the marketing. What are the different ways that you marketed your book, if I can ask?
Sure. Well, one of the things I did was I first had some marketing materials provided to me by the publisher, which are, but for the most part, an author is on their own. Unless you're, some kind of famous person, you're going to have to do that all yourself. Your book won't sell itself. So what I did was I first went to public libraries, in town especially, mm-hmm. and gave talks at libraries. And then that was well received. The first thing I did was had a talk at the library with the characters in the book who graciously showed up. And mm-hmm. this way I can tell people who read the book, they can easily talk to the characters in the book right there in front of them.
So the more people you mention in the book, the more sales you'll have.
Well, not only that, I also mentioned a lot of different businesses with mm-hmm. the hope that later on
that
I can go back to those particular businesses and ask them if they would be willing to have a consignment circumstance with it. I also had the book sold at the local hospital in Derby mm-hmm. in their gift shop. I also had it at a train station, mm-hmm. where a train station coffee shop, in case somebody wanted to buy one on their way to do
mm-hmm.
it, a cigar shop, as they call it, or a variety store.
What about any sports stores?
That was my biggest seller, and so I'll give them a cheap plug, but it's Blanchette Sporting Goods in Shelton was one of my biggest sellers. A great group of people down there that sell sporting goods.
Very interesting. So read for us another portion of the book.
Sure. Well, one of the things that the story is about, Jace, is that, as you read it, is that there was also a lot of it deals with perseverance. Mm-hmm. And in the final championship game, we were actually losing by 2 runs going into the last inning. And the quarterback of the football team got up, and he got a base hit with 2 outs in the top of the 7th inning to tie the game. And then we went to 11 innings. So in the top of the 11th inning, a young man got up who had already struck out 4 times in the game.
Did they have enough popcorn at the game, by the way?
I suppose. But the game started at 7 o'clock at night, and it was moving its way towards midnight. And I'll read from a passage about...
Midnight? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It lasted that long.
Wow.
And I'll read a passage of where this young man finally got it done after having so much frustration the whole game. Now, then it starts with, but then Joey, and Joey was our third baseman, mm-hmm. somehow fought off Matulis's pitches. Matulis was the name of the opposite pitcher, like a pinball flipper, and worked the count to 3 balls and 2 strikes. At least with a full count and the runners going, if Joey put the ball in play on the ground, Terryville's infielders would not have the luxury of being able to get a force play at second or third. The throw would have to go up to first base. If Joey could somehow earn a free pass, Gino would come up again, and although Gino's batting average was less than his weight, he already had 2 hits on the night. Matulis brought his hands to his chest. He kicked, and the runners took off in a dead sprint. Matulis slung a fastball. Ping! Joey fouled it straight back to the netting above the backstop. The fans behind the net in the first row of seats flinched. As he took the sign from Mitchke, Matulis fiddled with the ball behind his right knee as he searched for the right grip. He brought his hands together again, paused, and pitched. The runners took off again. Joey fouled the ball straight back to the backstop. Matulis set again, pitched, and the runners took off once more. Mm-hmm. Joey fouled the ball straight back to the backstop. The runners took off again. Joey fouled it off again. Lisa, that's the runner on second base, gasped for air as he touched third and turned around again
to go back to second to run again. On the 6th pitch from Matulis, after Joey G had worked the count to 3-2, the runners ran again, and the same thing happened again. A foul ball straight back to the backstop. Like a skipping record, Matulis just kept throwing fastballs, and Joey G kept fouling him off to the backstop. After the last foul ball, Joey G stepped out of the box to take a deep breath and collect himself. D, who was our coach, our head coach, was close enough for Joey to hear him. "Will you please get a hit or strike out?" he implored. Joey nodded. On the 14th and final pitch of Joey's at-bat, Matulis focused on Mitchke's fingers for the sign. He nodded and came set. He started his delivery. Lisa took off again and headed toward me at third base. I was coaching third base at the time. In his sweat-stained shirt, Romo, the runner on first, raced again towards second. Matulis threw Joey yet another fastball, but the result was as different as the sound from his bat. Bang! The ball trampolined off Joey's 33-inch aluminum bat high toward the left fielder. It just went, and then went over the left fielder's outstretched glove and bounced towards the left field fence like a Super Ball. And on that play, 2 runs scored, which were the eventual 2 winning runs. And Joey G, the young man who played third base, went from striking out 4 times in a game to getting the go-ahead base hit with 3 balls and 2 strikes and 7 straight foul balls.
So you never know.
You never know, Jason. And the thing is that it's that kind of perseverance which carries itself over, I believe, to life itself. In those types
Try
of games.
again.
Keep going.
Interesting for me, have you met any of the players later on in life?
Oh, absolutely. I'm close to them, most of them.
From any of them that have read the book, what are the things that you've heard from people who have read the book, or the people who played and read the book, how that has helped them in life or whatever?
Well, a lot of them have told me that it was accurate, that it really portrayed everything that went on at the time, obviously because I was there. But the one thing that I did hear from individual players' wives was that their husbands' heads were so big now they couldn't get through the door.
Oh, okay.
They're now the subject of the book. So, so they were very
happy.
I think they were happy about it, and they were very proud to have been.
And so, tell me about a letter you got from a famous Yankee player about the relationship between a player and a coach.
Well, I decided at some point, I sent a letter out to Bobby Mercer, many of you know, is deceased now. He was a great player for the New York Yankees for many years, and he was also a broadcaster on the Yes Channel. So I wrote him a letter, sent him a copy of the book, and basically said to him that I didn't want anything from him. I just thought he might enjoy reading it on his way back to the Yes Channel from Oklahoma, where he was born. And about a month later, I got back a card from him that basically told me that he remembered very fondly his own high school baseball coach, and that it had an influence on his life as well. It was very neat to get that from him.
That he became friends with his baseball coach.
Absolutely, to the day that he passed away.
Are you friends with any of the players? Or
All of them.
You
All
are?
of them, yeah. 2 of them.
Do you have reunions?
Well, we
Have you had
haven't
a
yet.
reunion?
We've had times where we've met at places, at individual stag parties when they got married, or events that we just all happened to be at the same one. I'm still very friendly with the coach of the team, who's still a friend of mine. I see him quite often, and we still always talk about the game. Some of the players went on to be two of the players are actually full-time police officers in the city of Derby. So I see them quite often when I'm traveling through Derby. So, and some of them have went on. The catcher, Joey Lisa, went on to play for the University of New Haven for 4 years. And then he ends up now he's the chairman of what's called the Strike 3 Foundation, which is a foundation created by a young professional baseball player who's from Trumbull called Craig Breslow. So Joey is the chairman of that Strike 3 Foundation. Others have gone on to do work. One's a plumber. One is a teacher. Another one works for the Connecticut Department of I believe the Department of either Administrative Services or Child Services.
So you got to know the players quite well.
Oh, absolutely.
Even followed up with them later
Absolutely,
on.
yeah. We
to see
talk
where they went.
sometimes on Facebook and things like that. It's always fun to do.
Does this book have a Facebook page or a web page?
It has a web page. It's the same as the book name. It's called www.thefatladyneversingsing.com.
And one of the first questions I had is why the title? I mean, you'd never know that it was a baseball book by the title. But why did you pick that title?
Well, there's a common phrase that the game's never over till the fat lady sings.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, in what happened at the game, the state championship game, is at the start of every extra inning, there'd be an announcement over the loudspeaker that when the game ends, please don't go on the field. So when you're losing, and to hear that, it was always like, wait a minute, the game's not over till the fat lady sings.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I'm saying that the title was chosen because for these young men, the fat lady never sings. They're champions forever, no matter what.
Now that you mention it, just the other day, and you might know it better than I, because I can't remember which game or which sport it was, but there was something that happened that because of a decision by an umpire or coach or whoever, people went, they thought the game was over, they went and got on the field, and the game was not over. What was
that was 2 years ago, a very unfortunate game for anybody that...
Something also happened just recently, like
recently,
a couple days ago.
actually,
Yeah. What happened 2 years ago?
2 years ago was Southington High School. It was playing Newington, a town right, I think,
Next
adjacent
door.
here.
My sister lives in Newington.
Newington ended up winning the state championship, where unfortunately in the bottom of the seventh for Southington, the winning run came across, the fans were on the field, and it turned out that the umpire ruled that the young man missed home plate.
Oh, okay.
So it was the winning run without a play being made on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he unfortunately, the umpire's decision is the one that counts, and he said he missed home. So Southington ended up losing that game in extra innings to Newington instead of being the victors in that game. Very difficult thing is that in baseball, everybody knows who makes that mistake. You can't hide it. It's like in football, if you're a lineman, you can miss a block. Only the people that probably know are the coaching staff or somebody who's watching a game film. But in baseball, it's obvious who makes the mistakes and who succeeds and who doesn't.
And I asked you, as an author, what do you see the future as far as authoring?
Well, what I'm trying to do now is create a screenplay for the book. But learning about screenplays, which I did, and once you buy the software, you think that's enough, but it never works that way, is that you have to, it's a whole different type of writing. And that's what I learned when I started it. So it's been a lot more difficult than I thought it would originally be. And it's a lot more intensive with scenes and action versus, third-party statements like you have in a book.
And you have to write the screenplay, or you just can't try to sell the story to Hollywood or something?
Oh, I
to do
could.
it?
I could.
But you want to write the screenplay?
But I was hoping to write it myself and then see where it took me. I could do that, and naturally, if somebody read it and thought it was that good and decided to do that, certainly I would think about it. Absolutely. I don't think any author would say no to that. But I did start to move into starting to write a script instead. And this book, it's a lot different than fiction. In fiction, you have to create your own characters. You have to develop your own characters. In nonfiction memoir, and what happens here is it's sort of like creative nonfiction in a way, because I have to remember back what was likely said and what everybody talked about, because dialogue's so important in books today. And that's the one thing I learned from editors, was the importance of having dialogue in your book.
Well, thank you very much. Well, here you go. You can
sure.
autograph a copy for Meet the Author.
Absolutely,
Jace.
Jace.
Pleasure having you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I had already given my copy to my nephew, who actually lives in Newington. So I need a copy for myself now.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Jace.